So I released some content the other day, both here on YouTube and Twitter. When it comes to football finance, there's always going to be some discrepancies, some challenges, some inaccuracies from people because different sources give you different information. But I like the basis premise to be as accurate as possible. For instance, I'm not a fan of net spend because it doesn't give you a genuine picture of what clubs are spending. When it comes to Arsenal, though, I will say this again. I have never seen a meltdown like it when it comes to just speaking facts, in my opinion, about Arsenal. And there's this notion that Arsenal have outspent the likes of Liverpool in recent years. And if you look at net spend or if you look at just transfer expenditure over the last 5 years, they have by a considerable amount of money. It's around 300 plus million euros. However, that doesn't mean they've invested more into their players than Liverpool or Man City. The facts are Arsenal cannot afford to spend as much as those teams. Doesn't matter how rich their owners even are. They cannot afford to spend as much due to the rules and the regulations surrounding the game. So I was kind of called out this week. But listen, in a friendly way by Lee Gunner. And I want to delve into this in a little bit more detail and show you the clip from the show and say why I think it's important for the information to be right. Secondly, I don't understand why this triggers people. I don't understand why this element of Arsenal makes people so upset. And maybe we'll get to a conclusion later in the video. By the way, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment below. Check out the squad. Brand new channel I'm launching. It's going to be hopefully you're going to like it, but one of the biggest podcasts I've ever done with one of the biggest YouTubers in the world will be on there with me. Scan the QR code or click on the link below to make sure you are subscribing. But let's play the clip from yesterday.
Well, why?
What a bunch of Northerners running off with the league every year for?
There's not a bunch of...
Arsenal's is 100...
Oh, here we go.
When it comes to the wage bill, Arsenal's is £188 million less than Manchester City.
Factually incorrect information. Arsenal's wage bill is 188 million a year less than Man City's. Excuse me?
That's correctly. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. There is a gap of that amount. It changes every year because turnover changes every year. But in the last reported financials, it was actually £216 million higher at Manchester City compared to Arsenal.
Carry on.
Right. City's wage bill.
What is it less than Liverpool?
422 mil.
City's wage bill is nowhere near 422 mil a year, by the way.
It is. And I know there's websites. I will say this, full disclosure. There are websites that show you the wages. They're wrong because they just show you the base wage. They don't show you a player's image rights because they're not paid as part of their wages. They don't show you the bonuses that they are paid. And a lot of them are essentially compulsory. They're not just for scoring goals and winning games. There's appearances. There's half-season bonuses. There's loyalty bonuses. None of that factors into those websites. But the clubs pay it still. So it's why I say net spend is irrelevant, in my view, when it comes to looking at what a manager's invested, because it's going to show that Ancelotti is getting Mbappe at Real Madrid for nothing this summer, when in fact it's costing 150 to 200 million pounds in signing on fees. But net spend will say it was zero cost. That is inaccurate. But when you look at this, you've got to go to the actual trading accounts, Lee, and anyone who's challenging this. Deloitte's break this down and it shows you. The most recent 2023 trading accounts show a turnover of £826 million for Manchester City. Wages, they spent 59% last year of their turnover on wages, which means it was a whopping £487 million compared to Arsenal's, which was 271, according to Deloitte. So I think Lee said earlier on in this video clip, like, where am I sourcing my information from? Man City's trading accounts, Deloitte and the Financial Times. They, for me, are the best sources. Man City directly and them. But let's carry on listening.
But anyway, carry on.
Arsenal, 234. It's 130.
That's also factually incorrect. 234 million is Arsenal's annual wage bill. Where are they getting these figures from?
So that, I don't know where Sir Jim got his figures from. And like I said, I think I said in the video, I looked into it a little bit when I heard those figures. Since Lee's video and since people have been calling me out, I've delved into it a little bit more. Again, when you look at Arsenal, okay, Arsenal's last reported turnover was £533 million. They spent 51% of their annual revenue on wages, which brings it in at 271 million. Again, you compare that to Liverpool, 683 million turnover, but 63% spent on salaries, brings their wage bill up to 430 million, a whopping 159 million pounds difference. Now, I'm not too sure what Sir Jim is reading. He might be looking at an average, might have been provided as an average, because actually Liverpool have spent 1.8 billion pounds on wages and salaries over the past 5 years, compared to 1.3 billion at Arsenal. So you're talking 500 million. If you actually look at, I don't even know what the answer to that would be. If you divide 500 million, it actually comes in at 543 million divided by 5 years. It's about 108 million a year. So I'm not too quite sure where Sir Jim's getting it from, but he's much closer than this idea that people are putting out that Liverpool spend less on their wages than Arsenal do. It's not. And where am I getting this information from? The trading accounts of Liverpool. Their own website breaks it down. The Financial Times breaks it down. Their fan channels break this down. And as I've said, this is the thing. And this isn't about saying Arsenal don't spend any money. It's not saying Arsenal are a poor club. I'm not even trying to make this into a fairy tale story about Arsenal in any way, shape, or form. And I'm simply wanting the financials to be a fact. Arsenal do not make as much money as City and Liverpool. Therefore, they cannot invest as much money as City and Liverpool. In the last 5 years, they have spent about £300 million more than Liverpool on transfers. But if you go back to the previous 5 years before that, Liverpool had outspent them. Over the past decade, it's 1.2 billion versus 1.3 billion of Arsenal. So Arsenal have outspent them by £100 million on transfers in the past decade. But when you look at wages, because Liverpool's revenue is typically higher than Arsenal's, they outstrip them by a country mile. Liverpool pay more in agent fees than Arsenal do as well. Now, all I'm saying is we've got to go back to the original point here, because some might be watching this saying, well, what is the point of all of this? The point of this goes back to the article in this video was sort of referring to. And that is that if there may be neutrals watching, wanting Arsenal to do it because there's a bit of inspiration there, that you don't need as much money as Liverpool. You don't need as much money as City to still be able to compete and potentially win the league. And this is true. But there are a lot of people that want to push out this. It is a false narrative that Arsenal have spent more than Liverpool, because you're only looking at one area of spending. The fact that Liverpool can afford £500 million more in wages and salaries over the past 5 years in comparison to Arsenal gives them a huge advantage, because they can keep their squad together. They can buy players, turn them into stars, and then keep them. It's harder if your turnover is lower. Now, there is a bit of responsibility here on Arsenal. They have increased their revenue, as you can see, which we put up on the screen. Their revenue has gone up to 533 million. It's going to go up again now that there's Champions League football. They then need to keep that growing. They need to keep that going. Because remember, when you sign players, you sign them on 5-year, 6-year deals. So if you suddenly sign players on 6-year deals on big wages, and then you're renewing the contracts of your current stars to keep them at the club, but then you start falling off and not making the Champions League, suddenly your wage bill percentage is going to increase, and UEFA is going to stop you going above 70%. So you have to be very, very careful. And if you look at Arsenal as an example, they were over 75% a few years ago. They won't be able to do that moving forward. They'll face FFP consequences. So this notion of just spend every penny we've got, it's not my money, I don't care, is crazy. This lie that's perpetuated that Arsenal are outspending is not true. Arsenal, by the way, are not a poor club. Arsenal, by the way, are by no means a minnow in this. They are super rich. They spend a lot of money and they invest, and they're going to want to look to increase revenues and spend more. But this idea that they can spend like everybody else isn't true. People say they've got billionaire owner. He can only invest £100 million every 3 years towards transfer expenditure and salaries. So again, he could do that every 3 years, but you're talking it's still a drop in the ocean compared to the revenues of the richer clubs, the turnover, the clubs with more turnover. So as I've said to a few people before, the percentage breakdown is also available here the big six and the top six clubs as well. And it just shows, in fairness, Spurs is very, very low at 47%. Chelsea have definitely got to start to bring theirs down with the new regulations coming in. Liverpool's is quite high as well. Manchester United, as we know, it's always been around that 66% mark. But it is what it is. And as I said before, the video that this refers to, if you haven't watched it, I'll put a link in the comment section. But the amount of people that were triggered by it, and especially Arsenal fans, I don't really get what you're angry about. I know you want there to be pressure on Arteta. Put the pressure on him. But you don't need to lie to put that pressure on him. You don't need to lie and say, well, we've outspent Liverpool, so we should be doing better than them. You haven't. Liverpool have spent, over the last decade, when you look at salaries and you look at transfer fees and look at agent fees, they have spent the better part of £1 billion more than Arsenal. Man City's is even higher. Collectively, you're talking well over £2 billion more investment than Arsenal. That doesn't mean you should just get a little pat on the head and go, it's okay if we don't win. No one's saying lower the standards. But surely you want your club to be represented fairly and accurately. And when it comes to the finances, we've got to drop this net spend nonsense because it makes no sense in the game. And clubs care more about their wage bill than they do transfer fees. Your wage bill is the biggest area of focus that the football people have when it comes to finances, not transfer fees. The biggest expenditure is not transfer fees, it's wages. That's the most important area to focus on. That's also an investment in players. So don't just look at what a club spends in the transfer window. You look at agencies, you look at salaries, you combine it all together. That is the investment that a club has made into that manager, into his squad, and into his team. When you have that number, then you're looking at accuracy. Then you can really judge who's punching above their weight, who has underachieved, who has overachieved. Surely we should want fairness in this, whether you're an Arsenal fan, United fan, Liverpool or City. Hit the like button for me. Big up Lee Gunner as well. Go make sure you subscribe to his channel. Until next time, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And check out the squad. I keep forgetting. Go and subscribe to the squad. QR code on the screen. I'll see you all in a bit. But listen, stop the Arsenal hating. I'm just going to say it before I leave again. Just stop the Arsenal hating. Especially lying when it comes to Arsenal. Because all you're going to end up doing is looking a bit silly. Take care, peeps. Bye.